Hello, this is Ben Blackwell and I am today introducing Hithard News. So today's topic is going to be recapping the fights from over the weekend with the Ricky Burns show, History Maker in Glasgow, Scotland on the Saturday night. And we also had a fight on Sunday with the real life Rocky story starring Tony Bellew and Ilunga Makabu for the WBC Cruiserweight title. So the first topic of conversation will be Saturday's card, with the main event starring Ricky Burns and European champion Michelle DeRocco. And this fight was for the WBA Super Light Welterweight title, which was formerly in the possession of Adrian Broner. But in Adrian's last fight against British challenger Ashley Fearfane, lost it on the scales by fading to make weight by 6 ounces. So this belt became vacant. So we had this fight with Ricky Burns and Michelle DeRocco. So overall, Ricky Burns has won the title with a 9th round stoppage, I believe, of DeRocco. And in terms of the fight itself, Ricky Burns showed glimpses of the Ricky Burns of old, where his jab, everything was coming off the jab, nice and straight, and having Michelle DeRocco rocked and in trouble for the vast majority of the fight. A lot of people, which I respect in the boxing industry, were saying that this was a much tougher fight than people was expecting, because Michelle DeRocco, he has a cracking record on paper. 18 stoppages, 40 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. So he does have pedigree. He was a good amateur as well, competed at World Amateur Games, European Championships, and was also, God knows how many times, Italian national champion in the amateurs. And for the last 3-4 years, he was very highly ranked in most governing organisations, mainly the WBA, and also was ranked in the top 10 with the WBC due to the fact he was European champion. And when you hold the EBU belt, you do automatically possess a top 10 ranking with the WBC. So back to the fight itself, Ricky Burns, he did look impressive, but I will say this, Michelle DeRocco, when actually in the fight itself, he did look very, very poor, as in terms of he was very, very flat-footed. He looked slow and lethargic with his footwork as well, showed very, very little body movement. He almost seemed to be wanting to do a job on Ricky Burns by just charging forward and throwing wide hooks left and right. He barely used his jab at all, in my opinion. And when he did get his jab off, it wasn't very effective, and straight away he tried hitting with the big right, and he fell short many times. He was being countered to hell. When he did try to get his right off, Ricky Burns just slipped right hook most of the time for that. And Ricky Burns' bodywork to actually slow him down was very, very impressive. That is something which Ricky Burns had neglected in his past couple of fights. Because like we all know, Ricky Burns is a terrific body puncher, but he seemed to have neglected that, as I said, in his past couple of fights. So I was very, very pleased for Ricky Burns to go back to the Ricky Burns we all know, which is a very, very effective puncher who can chuck combinations and ultimately get the job done. He might not be the prettiest of boxers to watch, but he does have huge heart, grit and determination, and gets the job done. The only people who he's lost to have been very high caliber opposition, such as Terence Crawford, who, in my opinion, was the best at lightweight where that original fight had taken place. Only been beaten by top guys. So now Ricky Burns has the WBA light welterweight title. Where does he go next? Well, looking at a list which I've made up, there is a possibility of the winner of Terence Crawford and Victor Postol, where Ricky gets the winner of that. He will be viewed as a weak champion because he's not a natural light welterweight. So winner of that could see that as a stepping stone to get another belt on their hands and become even closer to unifying the division. We also have potential fights with Lamont Peterson, who very, very tricky customer, very, very slippery, very awkward to fight, but all in all, in most people's opinions, is one of the best light welterweights. But it would be interesting to see if Lamont can still make the weight, because there has been talks of him moving up to welterweight and fighting Kell Brook, but that's another side issue for another day. Then we come to Ruslan Provodnikov, one of my favourite fighters. I'm sorry to admit that, but he is a brilliant come-forward fighter, and that would be fireworks to say the least. Then there's a possibility of Adrian Broner coming back to reclaim his old title, but yet again, he seems to have his sights set on the welterweight division, where he has also triumphed in capturing a WBA welterweight title before losing that belt in the epic matchup between himself and Marcos Maidana. Another possibility, Chris Algieri, a former champion at light welterweight, former WBO champion, beats Ruslan Provodnikov. If we like to admit it or not, it was a razor thin decision. A lot of people thought that Ruslan had enough to win the fight, but just one of those things. A very, very credible name is Chris Algieri, who tries his best, has good solid technique, lacks that punching power, but overall a good solid fighter. That would be something which I would recommend Ricky to take. A good name, good foundation, a good stepping stone to move on to bigger and better things. And then there is also what I would like to call my outside pick. I can realistically see some point soon Frankie Gomez challenging for a world title at light welterweight. If you haven't heard of him, he fought on the Canelo undercard, where he beat Mauricio Herrera in comprehensive fashion. Very, very aggressive fighter, good solid technique, quick, slippery. He knows how to box at range, knows how to box up close, and did an absolute number on Mauricio Herrera, who, to show the credibility of that win, a lot of people thought Mauricio Herrera beat Provodnikov, thought he beat Danny Garcia a couple of years ago, where a lot of people thought that Mauricio Herrera won comprehensively on the scorecards. Danny Garcia did not stand a chance in ever winning on the scorecards because it was so lopsided and Danny Garcia, in most people's opinions, was comprehensively beat. So it was a shock that Danny Garcia actually got the nod on that fight. But that has all been written about in the past. We're talking about the now. So moving on to the co-feature of the event, we have Tyrone Nurse and Willie Lemons contesting Tyrone Nurse's British title. This belt was formerly held by Willie Lemons himself before he got stripped of the title due to injury. So I really like this fight. It was much better than expected. You had Tyrone Nurse, a good, effective, slippery boxer. Questions about his chin are past. And then you had Willie Lemon, the old campaigner, still trying to slay young lions, keep himself relevant, win back his British title, and potentially move on to bigger and better things despite being 37 years old. In the end, the corner chucked in the towel for Willie Lemon because he was being comprehensively beaten. I was really impressed by Tyrone Nurse. Very, very slippery, as I said, and countering again Willie Lemon at absolute will, and the uppercuts from Tyrone Nurse. Oh, they were deadly at times. Very deadly, coming at all sorts of angles. His body work to set up all sorts was inept, exceptional for a domestic level fighter. I can comprehensively say that this was the best I've ever seen Tyrone Nurse, and it would be interesting to see where he goes from there. I believe he needs one more defence to win the belt outright. If I am wrong, please correct me. But could he achieve success at European level? Most definitely. That will be Tyrone Nurse's next step, I believe. Either that or go for an international title belt to get him a ranking in whichever governing body he chooses to go down. So a lot of interesting times for Tyrone Nurse, and let's see how good he really is. So now moving on to Sunday's card. And this was the big real-life Rocky story promoted by Matchroom Sports comprehensively in comparison to the Ricky Burns card. So on the bill, we had the return of David Price versus Pajeza of the Czech Republic. This fight was stopped in the second round due to the referee seeing Pajeza unfit to continue. So David Price, he came in much heavier than we have seen him before. He has said that his frame could not take 17 stone because he felt weak. He wanted to try and bulk up to see whether he performs better, as in physically, where he doesn't feel as drained and as cut. And also, in my opinion, also to see whether he can take a shot a little bit better. I'm not saying his chin's wrote off, like he has said, but it would help to see if he could carry the weight to help him absorb shots a little bit better. So in this fight, David Price started off jabbing away, just basically trying to lead everything off the jab as any good heavyweight should do, because he's not going to throw 100, 150 punches around. He has to throw, which is relevant, and he could see the jab was there all night for him to hit. And then from that, he started delivering the body work, and then he hit Pajeza with an uppercut, then a right uppercut, and then that is where the chinks in the armour from Pajeza started to show. He's only 9-2 anyway, so we wasn't expecting a world beater, but he's got a winning record against decent domestic opposition in the Czech Republic. So, and he is known to be durable. This is from the research I've gathered. So, dropped in the first round with a beautiful, quick, fast uppercut right on the noggin. Literally down for the count, we all thought. But to his credit, he got back up and he managed to survive the rest of the round. It was at the late of the round, within the last 30 seconds. So it wasn't like David Price were going to jump all over him and try and get him out. David Price knew he had his man there and there. He could take him out whenever he wants. In the second round, though, Pajeza came out with quite a little bit of intention. Started bombing away with the hooks, although David Price caught him on the gloves, he was being pushed back, which is very, very concerning to see, because in the past, whenever David Price has been pushed back, he has looked very, very uncomfortable, although I will admit against much higher calibre of opposition. But it was a little bit worrying to see someone who's much shorter than David Price being managed to shove him back with his punches, forcing him back. So that is question for concern if you are a David Price fan. But to David's credit, he wasn't taking any shots. They're all being caught on the gloves, 1 or 2 on the body, but he's got a long body, so someone who's smaller is going to catch the body time to time. But he looked good in defence. He was just a little bit worried to see that he was being pushed back. And then David Price got off the ropes, then got back to basics, just jabbing away, variating between body and the head. And then again, David Price landed the shot, which knocked him down in the first round and uppercutted him, and then the referee just waved it off, which it was taking at that time quite a bit of punishment. I'm giving David Price a little bit of disservice, just saying that he was just varying between head and body, but there were high amounts of punches. There might not have been the most effective of punches in terms of power, but he was getting through with a lot of shots come the end by the stoppage. But we'll be interested to see what David Price does after this fight. He said that this was just a confidence booster, putting things into place, which he has worked with his new trainer, Dave Caldwell, which is totally understandable, fighting the big bill in his home city, making him feel at home in a fight which is low down the card, to put those things which he's learnt in the gym into place and putting them into action. So he has said himself, he knows what the fight was. So, and I seriously do hope Dave Price moves on to bigger and better things, because he's a hugely popular fighter, hugely popular ranking, and I actually support his bid to get his IBF ranking back, because that fight against Erkan Tepe was a little bit of a disgrace. Not the result, but the drug failures of Erkan Tepe, the cover up. It's really, really bad and does the sport no favours whatsoever in the slightest. Then moving on, we had the fight between Kofi Yates and Tom Farrell. This was an eliminator for the British title. It was a brilliant little scrap. Very, 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 very competitive throughout. Shows a commitment to the sport by Matchroom to show these fights and fighters who are not the biggest of calibre name-wise, but these are cracking little fighters. You had Tom Farrell, 15-0, I believe, and then you also had Kofi Yates coming off a loss, rectified that loss previously to this fight, and gave himself plenty of hope, plenty of spirit in his performance. It eventually went to the scorecards, this fight, and it was a decision for Tom Farrell, but that fight could have gone either way, in my opinion. Either way. So But next up we had super middleweight Callum Smith in a 8-rounder against Reynoso of Argentina, formerly known as a fighter who fights at middleweight and light middleweight. Reynoso's best name on his record is Patrick Highland in a defeat in a knockout, actually. But he has mixed at good level. So, but to me though, Callum Smith, he said himself he didn't feel his best because I think he knew deep down that this was only a takeover fight. He had much bigger and better things to come. As I said, it was only a 8-rounder, and to credit to Reynoso, he was knocked down several times. He got back up and he went and gave as good as he's got. Like at times, Callum Smith was being pushed back from the sheer volume of punches which he was facing, and getting hit, especially to the body, one or too many times too much. So I really do hope that this was just an off night for Callum Smith, because he is mandatory for the WBC, European champion as well. I do apologise. Is mandatory for WBC. Probably going to have to wait for the winner of Badou, Jack and James DeGale if the boxing media is correct in saying that fight is close and will be announced this week, but we will wait and see. So, yeah, just to recap, I just thought that Callum Smith just had an off night, and that fight got waved off in the 6th round due to Reynoso being in no fit state to continue. Then we had, in a short turnaround, Stephen Smith. He recently fought Ivan Pedraza for the IBF Super Featherweight title 6 weeks ago, and he was back on this bill fighting in a 12-round contest against well-known import opponent of Tommy Coyle and Luke Campbell at lightweight. Daniel Brazuela in this super featherweight contest for the WBC silver title, the full silver title. And to Brazuela's credit, he did say in the build-up, I'm a natural super featherweight. I was blown up at lightweight, and I thought at first just saying that, but in this fight he actually looked really, really competitive. Much better than he did against Luke Campbell. Maybe not Coyle, because against Coyle he had kryptonite in his hands. He was doing massive damage to Tommy Coyle. But in this fight, he seemed a lot more relaxed, not so reliant on his power, and felt comfortable boxing with Stephen Smith. Very, very comfortable. And Stephen Smith, to his credit, after such a short layoff, wanted to get back in the mix straight away. He looked good. He looked sharp. And it was almost like he was letting out his frustrations of Daniel Brazuela. His combination punches, especially to the body, again, which is a trademark of the Joe Gallagher gym, were breaking him down bit by bit by bit. And you could actually see Daniel Brazuela throwing when each round were passing. He looked very, very good offensively. And Stephen Smith, he looks quite good defensively as well. I know it's against a lower caliber of opposition, which he has faced previously, but not too much of a step down from world level to Brazuela. I see Brazuela possibly a gatekeeper, fringe world level. If you struggle against him, you're going to get found out. And Stephen Smith, to me, he passed with flying colours when in the 7th round, I believe, or maybe 6th, I'm not too sure, where Stephen Smith had him in the corner and knocked him down twice within 30 seconds, and that was when the fight was waved off. It all started from the bodywork, where Brazuela was trapped, sitting on the ropes, and then as soon as Brazuela's back hit the ropes, then Stephen Smith was just all over him, pounding the head forcing him down, particularly with the right hand, and then a left to the body, which sent him down the first time, and then same again with the second time. Where like the fight was raved off, job done for Stephen Smith. If he holds the WBC silver fight, I would say for around a year, he should be mandatory for the WBC world title at super featherweight. So, and then we get to the main event. The one, the only, Tony Bellew, star of Creed, European Cruiserweight Champion, former British and Commonwealth Light Heavyweight Champion, former WBC Silver Champion, and 2 times World Title Challenger. So, this is the reason why the event was at Goodison Park. Tony Bellew's home ground, literally. Everton is Tony Bellew's football team, and he had a huge, passionate crowd behind him. His walk-on, I know it's only a walk-on, but it made my hair stand on the back of my neck stand up. So much passion from the crowd, wanting him to achieve and do well, but manage to do the city proud. It was something along the lines of a Ricky Hatton fanfare, where like everyone just wants Tony Bellew to do well. So the air raid silence goes and he walks out to Z Cars. You could see the pure determination on his face, feeling like this is his destiny, this is his moment to win. So, in the first round, Tony Bellew, to his credit, was using the jab to absolute perfection against Ilunga Makabu. Ilunga Makabu, 20 fights, 19 wins, 18 knockouts, rated as a top 5 cruiserweight in the world. Everybody thought, no, one-way traffic. Ilunga Makabu is going to do serious damage to Tony Bellew, and he's going to walk home with the belt. So, as I said, Tony Bellew, to his credit in the first round, was using that jab to absolute perfection, moving Makabu around the ring by just simply offsetting him, just throwing the jab out, even in defensive actions, just to paw away Makabu's right hand, which is what he uses to set up the left. A big hitting southpaw. So just offsetting him all the time, just chucking it out until he had him cornered. Then Tony just unleashes the right hands in and around the guard. He did that almost all night at will. Where I've said in previous conversations to people that Makabu very, very flat-footed, and a guard which is there to be hit through. It's a wide guard, not really protecting the face. And Bellew, to his credit, saw that, just started hitting through the guard. Then in the last minute of the round, Tony Bellew had Makabu up on the ropes and was having lots of success, cornered him, hitting him to the body, hitting him in and around the guard, particularly with the right hand, which was having visible damage. And then, to quote Dave Caldwell, he got a little bit greedy, where like he was too offensively minded. Makabu managed to get himself out of the corner and started jabbing, slipping and sliding from the punches being returned from Tony. And then it was almost like it was scripted. Right jab, little bit of a throwaway punch, just glances off Tony, then a big left hand sent him into a cartwheel onto the floor. Crowd in absolute silence. But Tony, to his credit, he got straight back up. He didn't look unsteady on his legs. It was like he knew, I am in a fight, and that was just a silly mistake. I'm not badly hurt. Just see out the rest of the round, which was only 20 seconds left in the round. So unless Tony had messed up, he was going to see the end of the round. So into the second round, a much more cagey affair from both fighters, to be perfectly fair. Tony Bellew still jabbing away, but not as often it was like more cagey, more timed, working out the distance, because Tony had a huge reach advantage of 4 or 5 inches. So Tony knew he didn't have to get up close and personal, up on his chest kind of fight. Just started to box at range, and to be fair, it kind of muted Makabu a bit, where like it stopped him from charging forward, like trying to hit that left hand again on Tony, because at the start of the round I had the impression that Makabu thought I could knock out Tony Bellew at any time I want. So I'm going to slip and try and throw the left hand without using a jab. And that is what happened for the most of the round. And at that point, Tony seemed to me like that, to me that he figured it out and started to counter with his own left and his right. And when he got him cornered, he didn't go instantly headhunting. It was straight to the body, then back out again. No prolonged attacks. And that is how that round went. Very, very cagey affair. I would edit to Tony just due to the fact he was more aggressive, forcing the pace. In the third and the decisive round, what can I say? It was almost like the first round again, where Tony thought, "You are nothing special. I have seen the chinks in your armour. I'm going to go after you." And for the first minute, they started to engage with each other, like trading with each other in the corner. And although I thought Tony was making a big risk in doing so, he was actually very, very effective. And it all started from a counter left, which sent Makabu stumbling into the ropes, where then, similar to the first round, started hitting around the guard with the right hand and the left. It seemed to me at that point that Tony actually switched southpaw when he had Makabu in the corner and started throwing with his right first, then the left, in and around the guard, and Makabu was physically being hurt. I know I say physically being hurt, it is a boxing match at the end of it all, it's not tiddlywinks, but he looked seriously uncomfortable and well out of his comfortable spot, and he had no response until Tony started to receive punches back and thought, I'm going to get away briefly, because he's put me down in the first round. He could more than likely do it again. So comes off the ropes. Tony then back to the jab, setting up his shots with the jab again, as any good boxer should. Throws the right hand, which sent Makabu straight back onto the ropes, and then from there, Tony went for the absolute kill and was just chucking right hand, after one after another. And then Tony took a little step to the side, to Tony's left hand side, and threw a beautiful left hook straight on the chin, which ultimately sent Makabu down to the floor. And the referee, Victor Lachlan, didn't even bother for the count, because Victor saw the danger he was in. He was unconscious, and it was down on the floor for a good 4 or 5 minutes, just to protect his safety and make sure he's all right. And then once the fight was waved off, you just saw pure and beautiful emotion from Tony, sagging to his knees, Dave Caldwell running in, giving him a hug. It was beautiful to see, one of the most beautiful moments I've seen in the British ring this year. I'm not going to go into Tony's rant. It's all there to see on YouTube. And yeah, so what's next for Tony? Well, looking at the cruiserweight division as a whole, well, plenty of fights to be made. He could fight his mandatory, the Latvian Bradis, who recently defeated Dorado for the WBC Silver Cruiserweight title, so mandatory next. Or if the champion in recess wants to come out, which is Zod, he could come out and fight Tony, which would be a very compelling fight in itself. And then we have the unification fights of possibly WBA and IBF Cruiserweight champion Denis Lebedev. That would be a big attraction in the division, which is potentially, arguably, 2 of the top 5 cruiserweights in the world going head to head, and the winner getting 1 step closer to being a unified champion. Or there was a fight which was touted a couple of years ago with the WBO champion Gorwaki, famously the winner of Marco Huck, and recently Steve Cunningham. He holds the WBO belt. That fight was touted I believe last year for the European title at Cruiserweight, but to Tony's credit, he did have the Nathan Clevery fight signed up, so fight for a couple $100,000 or fight for big money against a domestic rival against Nathan Clevery and try and revenge a loss. Then here are the possibilities. You have the WBA regular cruiserweight champion in Shumanov, more well known for being defeated by Bernard Hopkins at light heavyweight a couple of years ago. Then we have the prospects of Alexander Usyk, possibly one of the best amateurs which has been produced by the Ukraine boxing system, trained by renowned James Ali Bashir. There is Gasayev, who recently fought on the PBC bill, signed with Howard Heyman. There is a potential fight with Doricos, who recently fought Yulanga Kalemba in France, and that was for the WBA interim title, which Doritos looked very, very impressive. Not your typical Cuban, which is all the sweet science. This is a Cuban who likes to brawl at times, and is one of my favourite Cuban fighters at this moment in time. Or Tony could go down the route of going after the old-timer but very, very well-respected cruiserweight Marco Huck, which again could be a good first defence against a credible name who was one of the longest reigning WBO champions at any weight class in history. Still has that hunger to prove a point. So that would be a very, very credible defence. And that is your news roundup for today.